everybody. Welcome back. How are you enjoying your CMX Summit experience so far? Let us know in the chat who your highlight has been or what your highlight has been. I'd love to know. So our next speaker is the Associate Marketing Manager at PowerToFly and is currently leading the Chat and Learn program, where she invites skilled, thought-leading women to share their stories. She's originally from, now apologies if I get this wrong, Kerhungsken, I think that's wrong, New York, and now lives in Buenos Aires in Argentina. She is the founder of Mums Without a Village, a community for mums who don't have a village. She loves pizza, traveling, and funny memes. Nicole is going to challenge you to poke holes in your current programming and ask you to step outside your comfort zone to make a solid plan. She'll talk about actionable steps, a more diverse community, strategies to form a diverse pipeline of speakers, and setting ourselves up for long-term success. Give it up for Nicole.
Thank you so much, Valentina, and thank you to the CMX Summit. I am so here to talk to everyone about intentional diverse programming. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And give me just a second. It's always tricky getting everything live. And you should be able to see everything now. And so I'm just going to go large screen. Perfect. So I am so excited to be here today talking about intentionally building diverse programming. This is really near and dear to my heart ever since I came into my current position as Associate Marketing Manager at PowerToFly about 6 months ago. And so I'm really excited to take you through the steps and some lessons I've learned about how to build more diverse programming and thus amplify your community to be more inclusive and representative of those that you want to attract. And so I came up with a little bit of an agenda today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and why diversity is so important to me, about PowerToFly, what I do specifically at PowerToFly and how I get to work in this area. What have I personally done at PowerToFly and what do the numbers say about that? And then what are the actionable steps that you can take? Because that's really the most important part here, right? Like, you need to see what you can do to start implementing these changes. And then lastly, what are today's takeaways? And so let me tell you about myself with my very tired eyes and my very dark coffee, because I have a 2-year-old son who keeps me very busy. And so, you know, diversity has always been important to me. I like to say that I've always been an avid Black Lives Matter supporter ever since I could conceptualize what that meant. But I haven't always actively been anti-racist. And so, you know, talking about the elephant in the room, I'm white. Why do I have any authority to talk about diversity? I know that I come from a place of privilege, and so that's what makes it so important to me to talk about diversity and to talk about building diverse programming, because I realize this power that I have in my privilege to amplify and to lift underrepresented voices that have been historically repressed, and I want to be able to amplify those voices and help them share their stories, whatever they are. And so this is something that's always been really important to me. I come from a very small rural town in the US, and Kerhungsken actually is the name, Valentina, but really great pronunciation. It's not exactly an easy word to say. And so, you know, being surrounded by people that looked like me, it was very comfortable. And so, you know, with the murder of George Floyd and all of the social injustice that's happening in the US, and rightfully so, because of all of this repression, it's just made me feel so much stronger about diversity and pushed a calling in myself to really do what I can within my professional sphere to really push diversity and make sure that we're being representative and inclusive of those in our community. And so, you know, PowerToFly is a global platform connecting women, non-binary, non-gender conforming people and allies to companies that are dedicated to the diversity and inclusion. So essentially, we partner with companies all the way up as big as American Express and Microsoft, down to Slack and ad hoc, some fast-growing startups. And we provide them services so that they can grow a diverse pipeline and fill immediate hiring needs. And so it's really great to be able to work, you know, on the front line in the space and really seeing how we can make impact at a global scale. And so in my position, like I said, I'm the associate marketing manager at PowerToFly. And so I run our chat and learn program. And so our chat and learn program are these 1-hour Q&A sessions that we hold with skilled, thought leading women and people that identify as women. And so what we do is essentially we have a moderator on the line who goes through some questions and really opens the conversation up to engagement and participation of our community members. And so through the program, we invite, like I said, thought leading skilled women and people that identify as women. We invite our community to upskill through actionable conversations and providing tips anywhere from storytelling strategies for landing your dream job, to resume tips, to learning how to break your own glass ceiling and negotiation. Some really tough topics that women face in their careers. And lastly, we connect all of these women, our speakers and our audience members, so that they can provide resources and they can continue to grow in their professional careers. And so what have I done personally? So ever since starting this position about 6 months ago at PowerToFly, you know, it happened in the beginning of the pandemic, and it happened right before George Floyd was murdered, right around that time. And then with all of the other murders that have happened in that time, it became evident that we needed to take more seriously our efforts when it came to diversity and representation through our chat and learn program. You know, as I said, I felt that calling to be more representative and inclusive in the capacity that I can. And I felt like this was a really big power that I had. And so, you know, I've taken upon myself to really become inclusive and diverse in our programming and being intentional about it. I think we have to understand and recognize that diversity isn't just saying, hey, I want diverse people, and then they all come and march towards you. I think it takes intentional and effort, and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of dedication, but it has a host of benefits, which we're all aware of, or you wouldn't be on this call today. And so just highlighting some of the conversations that I've hosted, talking about why self-preservation is only preserving, workplace racism, talking about how we can help our LGBT plus community and the trans community, how we can be better allies to women of color, having conversations around ageism, and then also, I'm also excited to have expanded upon our program and started launching chats in Spanish, which is really great, because I think if we're going to talk about diversity and inclusivity, we really have to be cognizant that that looks different globally. And so, I live in Buenos Aires. I get to see firsthand what's important to the culture here. And so, we want to make sure that we're catering to an enormous amount of women who are in different points in their career. And so being able to launch conversations in Spanish has been amazing. It's been so rewarding. It's been a little bit nerve-wracking, if I do have to say, but it's been really amazing, and I'm really excited to continue to grow that. And so what are the benefits and what does the numbers look like because of all of this? So because we have essentially expanded our conversations and our topics, we've really had to accommodate our schedule to that, right? And so we've taken it from anywhere from 2 events to 15 events per week. So sometimes we have 2 events, sometimes we have 3 events per day, talking about different conversation topics. And really, my goal is to, of course, talk about the professional, but also talk about the personal, because as much as we would like to separate it, we just can't. And as a working mom myself, I know that firsthand. I would love to shut the door working in my apartment and forget about the rest of my life for a little bit, but unfortunately that's not possible when I have my 2-year-old running in here. And so I think that's another important point in being inclusive and representative, because we need to talk about the things that are really happening, and we need to be authentic in that. And so essentially we've had a 50% increase in attendance rate, which has been really fantastic. And I attribute that to bringing in more diverse speakers and bringing in more diverse topics. And so, let's get real with ourselves, right? Let's talk about maybe where we've kind of been failing and kind of how we set ourselves up and the space that we've created for our communities. So first, I've realized that we are in this kind of referral network, right? I've noticed that we get into this referral network of white women, And what happens? Typically, we don't move in very diverse groups, right? I mean, we can, and that's not to say that we don't, and it's not to say that we always move within the groups that look like us, but a majority of the time, we tend to move in groups that look like us. So what happens? We get one white, professional, incredible woman come and speak and tell her story, and she refers one or two more. And those two other women look like her. And so what happens? That takes up another space, that takes space away from a diverse voice and a diverse face. And so essentially, you know, what I'm trying to do and what I've done is getting out of that referral network and essentially creating another referral network, which I'll talk about shortly. And then second, what kind of topics are you talking about? Are you coming to the same topics again? Are you being authentic in your topics? And I guess 2 and 3 really go together, right? Because are we skating around the difficult topics? Are we talking about the Black experience? Are we talking about what it means to be Black in technology? Now, that's not my experience, so I can't talk about that. But what I can do is invite someone to highlight what that experience is like and to share their voice with others in my community who may be facing the same thing. And so, you know, really allowing people to tell their authentic stories and to bring their full selves to the Chat and Learn program. And it's really been incredible to be able to be a part of that and to also learn from that, right? We're a work in progress. We're all learning. We're all going to make mistakes. I've certainly said, you know, my fair share of things that I shouldn't have said, but because I didn't know. And so I've been able to grow from that and really learn from that. And, you know, going back to actually the referral network, that I actually learned from a colleague that is so dangerous and so divisive to any long-term diversity goal that you're trying to achieve. And so let's get into the actionable steps that you can take and the actionable steps that I've taken. This is really like the meat and peas of everything, right? So first, get real with yourself. You know, stop coddling yourself, stop coddling your team and saying, you know, we're doing our best, we're trying to do our best. No, you need to get real with yourself and you need to commit to making lasting change. The first step is to admit that there's a problem and to make lasting change based on that, right? And this isn't going to be something that happens overnight. And so that's why it's really important to understand and get real with yourself. And maybe you don't understand exactly where the problem is, but to first understand that there is a problem, and then you can dive deeper into what that exact problem is. Second, strategize about the direction you want to go in. So taking on diversity is a really big task and a really big goal. And while a fantastic goal, it can get really easy to get defeated and burnt out if you're not setting actionable goals that you can take, right? So saying, by next year, do I want to have 50% women of color speakers, or do I want to have 50% Black women coming to speak, 30% women of color speaking, and 20% white women speaking? What does that look like for you? And how can you actually attain those goals? Number 3, get team buy-in. I've noticed that this is so important because once you make your goals clear and you make it clear that you are actively seeking diverse speakers, you would be surprised, although I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but I was, that so many people were sending me referrals, and not in our typical referral network. People were recommending me Spanish speakers, people were recommending me diverse women speakers, and actually the majority of women that have been referred to me through colleagues have been diverse. And so that's been really incredible. And I think it's because, you know, I made it abundantly clear that my goal is getting diverse speakers. We have enough white women coming to speak. Let's get diverse voices on the stage and sharing their stories, pushing their businesses, providing their services, whatever that looks like for that woman. I want them to come and share their stories. And then number 4, determine your next steps. So now that you've strategized, you've got team buy-in, and you've gotten real with yourself, what are the next steps? How do you actually go about it? What does that look like for you? Does that look like asking somebody that you know who's a Black woman if she has women in her network? Does it look like going on social media and finding people to speak? What does that look like for you? And once you can determine those next steps, you can really get more active about the decisions that you're making on a daily basis. And so, you know, some of the things that I found and some of the strategies that I've used to include and be more inclusive and find more women is looking at my social media, looking at my email, right? So first, I went to my LinkedIn, I changed my header to say actively seeking diverse speakers to share their stories. And I've had people reach out to me and interested in sharing their story. So making it abundantly clear that that's what I want. That is my goal. I'm speaking it into the universe. And that is something that I wholeheartedly believe in. If you speak positiveness and if you speak these things out into the universe, well, they don't always happen to you. I feel like it's a lot easier to find your path and get there. So I changed my header, actively seeking diverse speakers to share their stories. I looked at my outreach. Who was I reaching out to? Who was I trying to get in contact? And so I have a template that I reach out to people with, and I've sent a lot of messages, a lot without responses, but every time I get another diverse face to come and share their story, I get really happy about it. And it's really exciting to see how the community responds to that as well. And how you find your people to speak. So where are you looking? Personally, what I do on LinkedIn is I scroll through my LinkedIn and I see if there's a really popular post from a Black woman that's got a lot of responses, and maybe I'll reach out directly to that Black woman, or I'll reach out to people who are commenting on her post. And so that's been a really big way. And also, if I look at a certain company, I can see suggested employees or suggested people. And so I can look through that list as well. I actually had someone who I was on a call with who I told that my goal is to get more diverse speakers and highlight Black women's stories, and not skating around that, right? But being honest that that's what I really want to do, and not from this savior white woman's position as, oh my God, look at what I have to provide for you. But no, more so as like, look, I really want you to come and share your story because you are a diverse voice. And I think it is so important to amplify that and to highlight you with everything that you're doing. That's a really different approach. And the person responded to me that they asked me if there was a race filter on LinkedIn. And I no, there's not. But it was just funny that happened. And then looking at Facebook. What can you do on Facebook? You can join groups. I love Facebook groups, and there are tons of groups. And so depending on your community, you want to look at what kind of groups you can join to find diverse speakers. And they actually have Facebook groups that are dedicated to diverse speakers. Some of them will have speaking fees, some of them won't, but it's really important to get in there. And I have found a slew of women through that avenue. Also catching shared posts, like looking at what people are sharing. They might share an incredible woman who could be a fantastic speaker. And so keeping an eye out on that. And also I would say on Twitter as well, seeing what people are retweeting, reaching out to people like that. And then finally, watch what other people are posting about. I think that's a really great way to also get ideas to bring in people and approach them with an idea of what you want them to talk about. And then lastly, one of the things that I found super valuable is signing up for varying newsletters. So I've signed up for a slew of newsletters, and you'd be surprised how many times they have speaking engagements and they list out amazing women. I signed up for this other one, which I can't remember the name quite now, but they just had a list of, I think, about 20 young Black entrepreneurs. And so there were amazing women that I can pull from on there. And so what I do with all of this information is basically I have a bookmark tab and a folder in my email that says people I want to reach out to. I've got a very long list at this point. And so really I try to tackle it little by little by little. And like I said, I've sent lots of messages without any response, but it's okay. You just got to keep going because like I said, this is not something that you're going to resolve overnight. You need to be cognizant of that. And it is a lot of work and intentional work at that. And so what are the takeaways from today's conversation? So get real with yourself. One, we're all a work in progress, and we have to admit that, and we have to recognize that, and recognize that especially if you're a white person and you're in a point of privilege, you probably are racist, and you probably have a lot of learning to do. And so going back to one of my colleagues' conversations about emotional intelligence, listening more and talking less. What can you learn from the diverse people around you, and how can you implement that into your community? Get out of your referral system. I would say the very first step after getting real with yourself is getting out of your referral system. There's tons of resources available. There's no reason to stay in that same system that you've been in. And so that would be my huge recommendation there. get team buy-in. You're stronger together as a team. You will be surprised how many people will start thinking of you and think about that time that you said, I am so dedicated to getting diverse women to speak. Please send them my way. And you might even have to make your own Slack channel or email thread for that. Start small. It's really easy to get burned out and overwhelmed and defeated. But you have to remember it's all about small steps, right? And so, there's this 1% rule that talks about how 1% of change every day, or 1% of progress, every day is better than taking these huge 10%, 25% jumps, because it is way easier to maintain 1% of progress per day versus having, 50% progress in a week, and then you're tired because that was a lot of work, understandably. But, I would just say that even if you send to 100 people and only one person responds, that's one person more who can come and share their story. And make sure that when you're talking to that person, you're making it abundantly clear why you want them to come and share their story, because they are diverse. You want to highlight them and being authentic in that, and not taking on this tokenization of somebody, or, playing the savior white person in this place. You don't have anything specifically to provide that diverse people can't find themselves, but it is important to provide an opportunity that takes you out of it and puts them main stage. That's my biggest takeaway from that. And don't give up. As I said, real diversity doesn't happen overnight. It is not easy. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of dedication, but it is so worth it. And it's so amazing to see what can come from it. I remember having a conversation with one of my colleagues saying, I really want to get more Black women in our audience, right? Like, I don't want to just be a place for allyship where people can learn about what they can do to support other communities. I really want to have more Black women in our audience, more Black women in our community, and more diverse women in our community. And the first thing they said to me was, then you need to get Black women and diverse women speaking. And I have so seen the uptick with not only the attendance rate, but also the attendance rate of diverse faces and Black women. And it is so incredible to see that, even with your 1% of effort, you can really, really make a change. And so it's really, really amazing to see that. And finally, don't let initial failure defeat your overall course. I think it's really important that while we strategize and while we plan out what we want to do, we also act, right? Like, don't strategize and never act, because that's not helping anything. It's not helping any causes. You're not supporting anything, especially if you are strategizing and putting out hashtag Black Lives Matter, or you're retweeting something, or you're sharing something. That's not actually making change. What actually makes changes is taking ownership and taking those actionable steps. And so beginning somewhere, even if that is just starting to outreach, or to start asking diverse colleagues if they have people they can recommend, or if they can look at your outreach and see if it's appropriate for the conversation that you're trying to have. And so, don't be afraid to learn. Don't be afraid to ask questions in a very gentle way, and don't be afraid to get rejected with those questions. And don't be afraid to have somebody say, I'm not interested in this because I feel like I'm not being represented in my best light. That's okay. And that's a really great opportunity to grow from. And so, I just want to leave us with something here. I have dealt with a lot of negative talk lately, right? There's a lot of negativeness in the world, as if it hasn't been said enough. There's a lot of social injustice. There's a lot of heaviness, the political climate globally. There's a lot of things happening, and it's really easy to get in your head about that and think about how you're not good enough, how you should be doing more, even though you're dealing with stress and you're feeling burnt out and exhausted. And I've just started to change my thinking to, I'm a work in progress. And I would really like to transmit that to everyone, especially with this conversation. We are works in progress, and our communities are works in progress. And so while we may not be where we are today, we have so much hope and so much dedication and so much energy that we have to put into this good cause, and putting in the effort it takes, especially if you're in a point of privilege or if you're in a point of power. It is so, so important to be an ally, to be an advocate, to be a sponsor to people who historically have been repressed and underrepresented. And lastly, as I said time and time, and I'll probably say time and time again, this is a marathon, not a sprint, okay? You can't just give up A month in, when you haven't gotten the amount of diverse speakers that you want, you have to keep going. It is a year long, it is years worth of goals, because there's tons of history of repression. And so you're not going to undo that overnight. And whether that's on your immediate team, whether that's within your company, whether that's within your community that you're building or that you're a part of, real change takes time. And beyond real change, lasting change takes time. And lasting changes in thought processes take time. So don't give up. Keep going. It's all going to be okay, as long as you keep going towards that goal of diversity and you don't give up, no matter how much failure you face along the way. And so with that, I am done. Okay.
Can I just give you a huge round of applause for that? And I'm sure everybody in the chat is also going to do that as well. I just want to let everybody know that this was the very first time that Nicole has spoken, ever. You would not have guessed that. It was flawless. You can see the passion in what you're talking about, and it was so engaging. So I just want, from me, I was just, you were so nervous before. The people watching wouldn't have seen that, but she did an amazing job. So well done. We do have quite a lot of questions. So very quickly, while we have a few minutes, I want to go to the questions and just find some that have been upvoted for you to answer. So Meredith says, are you paying women of color to speak at your events?
Meredith, thank you so much for asking this. And let me just first say that while I personally don't have the budget to do that at my current organization, that is something that I am effortlessly, no, I don't think that's the right word that I'm trying to use. I'm continuously driving towards that, because I do think that is so important that we pay women of color to speak and share their stories. And so within my organization, while we don't compensate anyone right now for speaking, unless it's in special circumstances, we posted some different summits where people have been paid honorariums. But in our normal programming, we're not compensating people unless it's a leads list. And of course, if somebody asks for compensation, I go back to my team and I ask, because I wholeheartedly believe in that. I've been lucky, I don't want to say lucky, but I've been able to find people who are okay with the leads list compensation in lieu of monetary compensation.
All right. Robin says, what advice do you have to make sure women of color feel safe at events or in your organization?
I love this question. And so when I initially have my conversation with speakers, what I always say is, I want you to feel as comfortable as possible, and I want you to feel as authentically yourself as possible. And so I do my best, and I hope that I feel accommodating to them, to let them know that it's okay to tell me that they don't feel comfortable. And so the way that we set up our speaking events is we actually have people submit questions before the event, and then I send the list of questions over to the speaker. And so they're able to review those, they're able to look at the questions, and I always say, please feel free to edit, reorganize, do whatever you want to that list of questions so that it most authentically represents you. And then another thing that we do at our events is, of course, if anyone wants to ask a question or make a comment anonymously throughout the conversation, we have a moderator on the line who accepts private messages. And then, of course, if anyone was inappropriate or anything, we kick them right out. We have a zero tolerance policy for that.
All right. And one last question from Patricia. She says, how do you create diverse programming without tokenizing the people you invite in for speaking engagements, etc.?
Oh, what a great question, Patricia. And you know what? I think that is probably something a lot of people are facing right now, and wanting to bring in more diverse voices without trying to tokenize them, or maybe they do without understanding it. And so what I do, like I said during the presentation, is I really try to approach it as saying, like, I'm not coming in here as a savior white woman. I want myself to come off as that. I really just want to provide a platform for you to share your story, share your business, self-promote. Like, I want you to talk about yourself as much as possible. I just have this platform, and I think your story really resonates with what we're doing at PowerToFly. And so I haven't had any bad feedback yet, but of course, if I was ever making somebody feel like that, I would want to know so that I can improve and be better in the future.
Perfect. Well, we've actually run out of time, but there are some more questions. So if people want to get in touch with you, how can they?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Nicole Felter. You can also find me on Twitter, which I'm trying to grow my Twitter channel now, so trying to be more active there. And I think that's about it. But yes, please feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn, send me a message on Twitter, and I'll be happy to chat.
Perfect. Well, once again, thank you so much, Nicole. You did an amazing job. It was really great to hear what you're doing over at PowerToFly.